So Jay, tell us about Winona Powder Coating up in upper parts of Indiana. Tell us about all that you all do for the finishing industry, if you can.
Sure. So we have two plants in northern Indiana, one just outside of Warsaw and Etna Green, another one in Elkhart, Indiana.
Hmm.
The Etna Green location is the headquarters location. We have two powder coat lines in this facility and an e-coat line where we can do large parts, heavy parts, on the e-coat side.
Hmm.
So one of our powder coat lines in this facility is specifically dedicated to aluminum. It has an aluminum pretreatment in
Hmm.
it because we do a lot in the marine industry and then post-formable aluminum. So we went to a chemistry that specifically meets those needs. The other line is also, can run as a bimetal line. We do a lot of cast iron, steel, and aluminum on that line as well. And
Hmm.
so, that's that. We in this facility we serve marine, automotive, agriculture, building products, just a wide variety of industries and customers.
Gotcha,
In
gotcha.
our
Yeah.
Elkhart facility, this is 100.
Mhm.
The Ed Green facility is about 167,000 square feet,
Mm.
and we have a 50,000 square foot facility in Elkhart, Indiana, that has two traditional powder coat lines that are both bimetal.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. How far apart are this mileage
About
wise?
50 miles.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sure you've worn that road many times going up and back, but
That's
yeah, that's
fact. I think the car can get there on its own.
that's right. Well, some cars do. That's pretty good. Yeah, with that. And so you've been in this. You weren't the original owner of Winona, right? You're over 20 some years, right? That you've owned
I've,
this
I've
for.
owned the business since September of 2002.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
and this was the business was started in 74, started powder
Mm,
coating very early in the powder coating history in 79.
mm-hmm,
And I think transitioned fully into a coatings business. Um, the story on how I got here is a little interesting.
mm-hmm,
So the company, there were two owners that bought the business in 90 or 91. They sold it in 98 to a private equity roll up that
mm-hmm,
rolled up surface finishing companies.
mm-hmm.
Well, that deal went sideways for a reason not related to Winona. I was the investment banker that LaSalle called in to sell off the companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last company left was Winona. So I called the bank and said, look, I'm conflicted because I represent you, but I'm interested in buying Winona Powder. And when you're in the distressed assets part of a bank, they're pretty pragmatic. The only question was, can you fund? I said yes, and so I made him an offer and bought the company.
Right. As a private individual, you did this, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Any knowledge of the industry at all before that, or
Nope. Other
what
than
in time?
other than as when you're a banker and you're putting together the offer book essentially. So what I learned about powder coating, I learned when I got the call from LaSalle to step in and see if we could help resolve the situation.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What attracted you to that industry then? It's completely different from what you had been doing, but what attracted you to it?
Yeah, so I started off life in I've always been a B2B, you know, I started off, I co-op with IBM in my undergrad.
Mm,
And then I was in the industrial construction space, first in the epoxy flooring business, and then secondly in the electrical mechanical construction. So I was always completely comfortable on the plant floor. That's where I spent
mm-hmm,
most of, the early days. Did an MBA, got recruited by a utility, um, did some entrepreneurial stuff to prove I could lose money in land development with the best of them, things like that. So, you know, when this opportunity came up, I had a strong sense that I knew what to do with it.
right. Right.
And,
Yeah.
and we are five times larger than we were revenue wise then.
Mm,
And head count four times. We were 40. We're now sitting at about 160.
right. Wow. That's imagine. And it's funny because, like I said, you're not the traditional facility owner. Some people come up in the families, right, and they sort of have the same mindset. I'm assuming that you coming outside the industry, but having a kind of the background that you have, uh, kind of helped. Was a tremendous asset. Just not having the same thinking that to certainly scale this up. Which I'm sure you did. You have an inkling that it could get much bigger than what you thought it was going to be with that, or
I think the opportunity, if you would have asked me, 23 years ago,
Hmm.
did I think it would be this? I would say, I don't know that I would project where we were. I mean, we started off, we had 25,000 feet in a little town called Mentone and 20,000 feet in Elkhart.
Hmm.
We're now sitting at 230,000 feet under roof, and we're out of space. Looking at expanding. And
Hmm.
so, I think the focus on us was just always trying to be, a good business partner for our customers.
Right.
So
Hmm.
if you say sort of what happened, did was it was sort of we got big, and as we got bigger and became ISO certified in 2012, you know, I bought this facility in 2012. So we just sort of kept focusing on serving the customer, getting more certifications customer certifications, becoming ISO certified. You know, Here's what I can tell you the most unfathomable thing is to me is, like when I bought this business, and you've been in this industry for
Hmm.
a long time, we were your typical job shop.
Right.
There were
Mm.
there were within 60 miles, there were at least two other places you could take parts to get coated.
Right. Right.
Well, as we got bigger, that started to change. Because now when you start doing, we're tier two automotive because we're a coder, but
Hmm.
you've got to that business just can't move. So
Hmm.
it got stickier. So as we grew, look, '08 took out some of the competition.
Right.
That took some of it out. There's a lot of I think there's a lot of owners that don't have succession plans.
Right.
So that becomes sort of an issue. But as we got larger, we started getting into more, I don't want to say more complicated work, but work that required much more in terms of quality system certification, teams in place.
Mm.
It doesn't work if I'm out there spraying parts. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
You know,
That kind of thing. It kind of scares some people off that they don't want to take to grow with what the business needs to grow as. Right. Some people shy away from that. They're very complacent of what they got, but it doesn't seem like you all were that way. You really wanted to grow with customers that you had. Right.
yeah, and look, we were John Deere suppliers when I bought the company. Um, But if you would have asked me at that time, and John Deere was, we served some stuff to them, but it was some of the small foundries and things that were in our area. If you look at us now,
Hmm.
and this is probably the single thing that I find most interesting is, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that we would have customers that are doing north of $1 billion in revenue a
Right.
year.
Right.
And now we have several customers that are much larger than $1 billion on an annual run rate.
Mm. Right.
So,
Yeah.
and dealing with those guys and being tier two automotive and we're on, I mean, at this point that goes through this facility, parts that we code end up on Volkswagen,
Mm.
Ford, General Motors, Subaru,
Right. Yeah. There's some
and
big.
we're,
Yeah.
we're looking at Scout parts right now and Slate parts right now.
Hmm.
So those are startup deals that parts are coming through here to be tested.
Hmm.
So I mean that gives you a little bit of feel. It's we embrace that business.
Right. Right.
That we want that business. We're good with the performance requirements that they expect.
Right. Right. I was gonna say, if you're going to get into that arena with that of these huge manufacturers and things like that, you certainly have to up your game as far as quality and customer service, which you'll attest does not happen overnight. I mean, you've got to first of all convince staff, and then you've got to pull it off. That's the two things, right? I mean, that seems to be what holds a lot of people back. How did you all seem to put that together and, like you said, and grow over the years like that?
It's really been a combination. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we have on the floor. It's amazing the length of time we keep people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that continuity of, especially on supervisors in our Elkhart facility.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this: every one of my supervisors in Elkhart has been with the company over 20 years.
Really? Wow. That's very impressive for that. I mean, that's yeah.
And so, we look at, we grow people, we invest in people, we reimburse for tuition. I have 6 people at Women in Finishing right now.
Mm.
We invest in our employees. We want them to see and talk to other people. We focus on, our focus is on, we're quality in turn. I mean, that's,
Right.
that's what we are. The old adage, fast, cheap, and good. And look, we're competitive, but the focus is on quality in turn.
Right. Right. Exactly. It seems like early on you all embraced, some people will look at themselves as they're a finisher, they're a coder, they're whatever. I don't think a lot of people, but I think you all have embraced it, that you're a service oriented business, right? You're there to service your customers. And that requires the quality, it requires the relationship and everything. But it seems like you all have really embraced that you're a service oriented business there for your customers.
We're service oriented, and we like to do, and this is something I think that sets us apart. We
Mhm.
like to do hard things. you know,
Right.
we're doing a part, an agricultural part right now, and just to be clear, we have to be very careful. I'm not supposed to put, we
Sure.
serve the big green agricultural monster, and we have all their
Hmm.
certifications on our website, which is fine, but they're very specific about us not using them in an advertising sort of way.
Sure. Hmm.
But we're doing a service part right now for them that we're having boxes built that are 12 feet long.
Hmm.
The box, these are wooden boxes that we can palletize, that are basically their own pallet. We're putting these parts in. We're actually putting a structure in the box to screw the part, because these things are getting shipped all over the world as service parts.
Okay.
And they're these 10, 11-foot long parts that we're packaging. You were actually, when it leaves here, it's ready to go into their parts distribution without them ever touching it again.
Right.
We
Right.
do.
Wow.
We have an extrusion. We have a large company that does extrusions that go in for drop ceiling frames. So when you're in like a convention center and you see a drop ceiling that's not wall to wall, there's a frame around those. We actually take those parts, we coat them, we put them 2 to a plastic sleeve, 6 plastic sleeves to a box, a hardware kit. We seal the box, we palletize the box. So we package, where it makes sense for us to touch it last.
Hmm.
That's the kind of stuff, the services that we go to.
Right. Right. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, to help that step of the way, you're actually very much of an extension of that customer. It seems like in a lot of ways with that, of doing all those things, which, like I said, a lot of people just don't want to do sometimes with that. Some operations just don't want to do that.
And I'm assuming you've seen the article about what we did in post forming, for the marine industry.
Hmm.
That there was, you should have heard. I mean, it had been tried before to somewhat disastrous results.
Hmm.
To powder coat the pontoon boat rails, they get welded together, coated, anodized, however they were getting done. Then they slide the skin in, and then they bend the thing 90 degrees. There was a lot of failures in the past. We partnered with a company, Smokercraft. They do, and we partnered with them. We said, look, we're going to either figure this out, or we're going to run it to the end. If it's figure outable, if you will, we said we'll do it, or we'll throw in the towel.
Right.
So the focus always being on what can we do to solve somebody's problem.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
and I think there's a lot of competitors of mine that don't want that. That's not a world they want to live in.
right. Right. Exactly. And I guess when you solve their problem, you're sort of a partner for a long time then with them.
Yes.
That's kind of the key to it. And when did you all add the E-coat line with that? What year did that come in for you all?
2020.
2020. And tell me, was this sort of something you were asked by customers to do, a customer or customers to do, or where did that idea come from with that?
So look, we've been talking about e-coating since 2003.
Hmm.
But candidly, to be honest with you, because I have an MBA in finance, e-coat lines were kind of a terrible value prop. I mean, terrible ROI.
Hmm.
It's just a terrible business. I mean,
Hmm.
why are we in it? We're in it because a number of our customers, on the large customers, what you've seen is industry embrace e-coat, powder coat.
Right. Right.
And so that really is, if you're going to be in our size and serve, the reality is we're seeing more and more parts that are E-coat, powder coat, and it's in the aggressive areas. So, parts where there's a metal to metal contact, for an example,
Hmm.
where there's like teeth that are doing depth on a planter, because you're going to get through the coating.
Hmm.
It's just, it's not, the environment. So what the real focus is, having zinc phos on that line and then E-coat and then powder top is we're eliminating the creepback corrosion.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. With that. Well, I mean, so I mean, you had how much time thought did you put into this is what you're going to invest in? I'm sure it wasn't cheap to do this type of thing and get then you've got to ramp up training and get personnel and everything. Uh, I mean, what was your thought process on that to eventually
So
get it done then?
okay, so the other limitation is a lot of the E-coat capacity that's out there was designed for smaller, thinner parts.
Hmm.
They didn't have the cure window to be able to deal with some of the heavier the castings and
Hmm.
that. And so we saw it was a tight supply of E-coat capacity that could do heavier parts.
Hmm.
And so we looked at this and said, okay, if we're gonna, because we looked at buying an E-coat company that was near, but they didn't have the cure capacity.
Right.
And so when we built our E-coat line, we looked at building something that we could run, some fairly large, heavy parts. So
Hmm.
on each, it's an indexing system. It's a TTX indexing system. The part window is 48 by 48, 48 wide by 48
Mm.
tall by 102 inches.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, pretty big. Yeah, that's a
And I can do
yeah.
500 square feet per rack, or I can do up to 2,000 pounds of parts per rack, whichever maxes out first.
Mm.
And so that allowed us where we saw was we were getting asked a lot on E-coat powder coat. Look, we were doing a part for John Deere that we were subbing out, and we were chasing E-coat vendors
Mm.
because we kept getting kicked out. We weren't
Right.
big enough. It kind of became a necessary evil, if you will.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, it's such a rarity to have those combinations. It is, like I said, especially in automotive and some other very, aggressive corrosion areas. It's something that they absolutely want because they know it's going to work. But like you said, is that there's not too many operations your size that could pull that off that have those type of things. I mean, it's not too many that I know about that can do that type of work with that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, you start getting out of us. You got a couple big players up in Wisconsin, and then you've got some of the PPG plants.
mhm.
The Crown and Medicoat plants. But there's one to your point. There's not a ton of us.
Right. Right. Yeah. And to handle that volume and that size of what you're talking about is pretty
Right.
impressive with that as well. With that, and so I guess that has really that attract more business for you all once you're able to kind of get that in and get it nailed down and finalized with that. Did that? Uh,
Yeah, it definitely. We track. We look at what we're quoting every week. We look at what we're quoting E-coat, powder coat, and powder coat, and we see it. But you see, I mean, we're doing control arms for automotive where they know they're going to get rock chips. I mean,
mm-hmm.
it's connecting the wheel assembly to the car, so that's an area that you're going to see. So I think we're seeing our belief is there's more, not less,
Mm-hmm.
parts that are going to move to E-coat, powder coat for the durability.
Right, definitely. Yeah, it's something that like I said, I know I've talked to people in automotive and agriculture. That is the go to is what they want with that. And for yourself personally, I mean, like I said, when you all started, I think I saw on your site that you know 500% growth over on sales over the years, and I know you've gone to from like 40 some to over 150 some employees. How do you as a owner manager scale that up just for yourself? I mean, it's the width seems to be huge now compared to when you started just 25 years ago with that or 24 years ago with that. Uh,
So, I mean, I think that for us, it's just been the focus on look, employee retention.
mm-hmm.
I can tell you that I would tell you I would be stunned if there's anybody in the industry that provides better health insurance than we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. We pay 70%, including family.
Wow. Yeah. That's
So, we pay it at market and we benefit heavy and we invest in our employees. And so, I think it's just that we didn't, we just kept sort of executing, if you will,
hmm
and the growth, it wasn't like all of a sudden we picked up a customer that doubled our growth. We have one customer over 10%,
mm,
Tim, one. And by the fifth customer, you're below 5% of revenue.
mm,
And if you look at that top five, it's automotive, it's marine, it's building. I mean, we are so diverse, and that's one thing we very much have focused on.
hmm Right.
Is not being industry or customer, heavy.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I was
So
going
it's
to say
allowed
that.
us to sort
Yeah.
of weather this.
Right. Yeah. You're going to have these ups and downs in every industry. Hopefully, you don't get very many industries that are in the same sort of spectrum together, and you can kind of weather that with that. And that seems like you guys have been able to kind of. Is that by plan of not really going after, or is that just the way it's worked out for you all that not to kind of have
I
a very
mean,
broad.
we haven't. I can say this: we haven't prevented in a way that says, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
this customer's too big, so we're not going to take it."
Mm-hmm.
But we focused on marketing to, we have really focused on, marketing to a diverse group. So, our digital marketing team, of which is part of, we focus on, we are not, if you see what's going out of here, we focus on all kinds of industries and all kinds of solutions
Right.
because we want, we like that diversity.
Right. Yeah.
And
Definitely.
we've got plenty of capacity left to sell. And
Mm,
so the focus for us is really on, how do we grow the business and continue to grow the business?
right.
We're
Mm,
not, and this is, and just so this is for us being, me, my wife, this is a long-term family holding. Like we have no intention of selling the company.
mm-hmm.
Our kids are coming in. One's coming in starting in August of this year. So, he is a business analytics degree from University of Denver.
Mm,
He's coming into the business, and the nice thing is he's worked at a manufacturing company out there. He could have taken a job in tech, but he voted with his feet, took a job in manufacturing. We see this as really a platform because I was an investment banker. That's how I ended up with this company.
mm-hmm.
So we'll continue to grow it organically, but we'll also, down the road look at, are there opportunities to expand adjacent geographically, where there's some opportunities to acquire other companies that don't have a succession plan and don't want to sell a PE, you know,
Right.
because they know that's becoming more common knowledge to people what PE is, and I think that that there's companies now advertising we're not PE owned. I mean, basically that's how negative that connotation's got.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's certainly something I think we're from the beginning. You all have looked at which one of your bigger strengths is that your employees are a tremendous asset, just like it's an asset that you have. Besides the equipment and some of the lines, this is a very skilled, experienced group that is there. All right, and and that's the any customer that would think about coming though, that's got to be a tremendous plus for them to look at that and know that you've got these people that are going to be there day in and day out with you. So,
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. We have we have our long term employees, but then we've also upped our game. We've our management team has evolved. I can tell you that where I sit today, we have the best management team we've had in the 23 years of ownership.
mm-hmm,
But our new VP of operations that I interviewed 10 years ago or 11 years ago when when I had the automotive wheel business,
mm-hmm.
I ended up reconnecting. He came in. He was 30 years with Magna, the huge auto parts supplier.
Yeah, sure.
He was 8 years with Body Coat, the heat treating company. So we're focusing on the management team. Our new HR manager, HR director came out of automotive, at a tier one automotive. So we're you know we have and those of us who were all there's a bunch of us who were in that wheel business together. So it's the focus is on building, not only having the long term employees and retaining them, but putting the additional new members on to serve to meet the customer's needs of what our customer base looks like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely with that, and it is something. I mean, do you have any other? Before I forget, do you have any other plans? I mean, you said you've got a lot of capacity right now, right? You've got room to grow, take on more customers at this point, right? You're not looking for any more
Yes.
expansion with that. Is that?
No, just existing line capacity. We're adding. We think we'll probably by 4th of July timeframe, we'll add another full shift on one of the powder lines. We're
Hmm.
continuing to see the success. The marine business was one of those that, solving that problem and now having probably north of 30,000 boats in the field with no warranty issues
Right.
is something.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, yeah, that's certainly an achievement, like you said. And again, I think when people are customers are coming to talk to you, it's not. I don't think it's like they can go out and talk to 8 or 9 other coders that can do the same thing that you all are doing, right? It's a very and you're in such a great area. It seems like you're so close to everything, whether Chicago, the Michigan area, Ohio, even going down to Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, you're pretty close to everything. A majority of the manufacturing operations in the U.S., I would assume with that.
Yeah, I mean, so or flip side, what we're seeing is, as you will also recall, we all used to say this was a business that was 100-mile radius of your plants.
Hmm.
This was a geographic kind of business.
Hmm.
That's kind of sort of been thrown on its head. We're on the way, or we're not too far out of the way of where a
Hmm.
product is going. The control arms start north of Green Bay, come to us, go from here to we get Eco Powder Coat, goes to Effingham, Illinois to get machined, and goes to Chattanooga to get installed.
Right on
So
the way. Yeah.
we have a part coming. The part that we're boxing for John Deere right now comes out of it's a Canadian plant. Comes to us, goes into their distribution center. You know, heads over to the headquarters area and goes into the distribution center.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
that's the other thing that's happened is we're on the way.
Right.
We're you look at bearings. We have two of the large bearing companies that are customers, Rex Nordriegel and Timken. And while all their machining operations are gone out of the U.S., the casting is still happening at the plants for the most part north of us. Michigan, Wisconsin. We're seeing so we still coat the pillow block. We're still coating all the now they're just going to Mexico to get machined.
Hmm. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's we're seeing we're seeing that. I mean, and they're this was an interesting one. Most of the castings that I would say, well north of 90% are machined after coating.
Mm.
And so the one thing, and I can say this up until you guys did a recent one, Clay. I think we may have exceeded, but so we did an article on us being we're one of the best at controlling thickness because if you get much over 4 mils
Hmm.
or over especially at about 5 and you go to machine, you don't get a clean machine line.
Right.
You'll get chipping outside the area that you wanted coated. So we put out an article on post machining castings, us being the place to come. Showed a red casting that was coated all and then machined, and it was one of the highest open rates of anything because it's a problem that people had, and this was a
Right.
solution.
Right.
And,
Right.
and
Yeah.
look, it's really easy to coat a casting over 5 mils because if you think it comes out of the dry off, it's already. I mean, a casting will just suck powder.
Hmm. Oh
And,
yeah.
and so having our guys trained and our booth techs understanding this is that's been an interesting step for us. So in 2019, line 2 at Etna Green is when that went in and went into production, and that was really done as we were always in closed track conveyor. That was I-beam conveyor for the weight and shorter washer because the amount of cast iron that we do now.
Hmm.
When I bought the company, we were sub 10% cast iron. At this point today, I'll tell you we're probably a third,
Really.
35% cast iron.
Yeah. This can be difficult. Yeah. Definitely. This can cost some.
And so we built that line. It's about a 900-foot line. has one turn at the end. Well, the entire process occurs one direction, so that I got 400 plus feet of cool down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
because I got to be able to pack that part off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Like I said, castings are very much troublesome. Especially if you've got some outgassing or things like that can cause some problems with that. But to know how to do it is an art form, so to speak, with that of how to get them, finished right to the spec. So
right. And so
yeah.
once again, our focus is on once again solving problems.
Right. Right. Exactly. And when you look back, I said next year is going to be 25 years. I think for you all, yeah, for you personally
Yep.
with the company, yeah. I mean, did this play out like was this the plan, or I mean, to get or is this something that you kind of adjust as you go along? Was this something you really wanted to see when you first took over this company of what it could be? Was this kind of the vision of that?
Look, I'm a hardcore entrepreneur guy, and so I'm always looking for opportunities, and I probably have an unhealthy amount of risk tolerance, to be completely clear.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't. There wasn't there was no. I couldn't pull out a notebook and tell you this was a 20-year plan. We just buckled up and went for the ride and took opportunities as they came at us. But we also went out. We're active. We're focused on getting our word out. Getting of people being top of mind about Winona.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we work. Clay's team. Look, they're focused on they're focused on feeding the kind of data out there that that AI is picking up. They recently did some searches. John Deere approved coders. We showed up as the number one. So we look, as you know, the pandemic crammed 10 years of change of B2B marketing into 2.
Definitely.
And I'm not saying we figured it out.
Right.
It's a different. It is. Look, we used to have 2 salesmen driving around in their pickup truck, dropping off brochures. Because that's how you did it 20 years ago and 10, even 15 years ago.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah, for that. It worked for them.
It did. But now, we do seeding for Magna out of their Lancaster, Ohio plant. Well, look, all purchase. Magna is a nice little auto parts company that does $100 million of revenue every business day globally. Well, you're not going to talk to somebody at that plant that's going to, you can drop off a brochure to a locked door. So you're dealing with Detroit, Toronto, launching these programs through the PPAP. The engineering teams are local, but it's a different world, and we're selling it to different customers.
Right.
Definitely, but we also have customers that have grown, that we've grown with. I mean, one of my customers that was here, here's the crazy thing. We have a customer in the spring business that was in the top 5 when I bought the company. We've grown 500%. Well, so have they, because they're still in the top 5 or 6 customers here.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I have 2 massive success stories. This one just released. It was from bottleneck to breakthrough. So this is public knowledge. It was an article. There's a company in Warsaw, just happens to be in Warsaw, right where we are, and called Cable Bullet. And they were literally the limit to their growth was consistent powder coating. So where they were looking at putting a line in, all this, they'd gone through 2 or 3 powder coaters. They get to us, and that business has just exploded. And the owner had this article. He said, all I used to think about was powder coating. Now I don't think about it at all. Because we are not a bottleneck for them.
Right. Finishing usually is.
They've gone from startup to, they're in our top 6 or 7 customers. Another startup company called AAC is in the pest control business. The guy was a rodent guy. Develop this ridge guard screening and all these products that sell into pest control. They were a startup when we started working with them. They're in our top 10 customers, and we're big.
Right. Amazing what happened when you give them good service. They don't have to worry about that. They don't have the issues with the coatings anymore. They
Right.
kind of focus on other things that they can do with that. It does hold people back sometimes with that. So yeah, definitely with that. But yeah, that's a tremendous success story with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that's that's our focus is look, we don't want to be a vendor. We consider ourselves partners.
Hmm.